Good day. Have you ever seen how some people just seem to have it all? They seem to attract all the right opportunities. They get the promotions. They get the visibility. Everybody knows them and everybody knows what they're about. Well, it's not by chance. It is what we call in marketing, I guess, personal branding, which is really an intentional and conscious way in how some people decide how to shape perceptions about who they are, but also just to create a narrative about who they are. Good day. My name is Thebe Ikalafeng, and I'm the founder and chairperson of Brand Africa, which is a brand-led initiative to change the narrative of the continent. So I'm excited to talk to you today about this concept of personal branding, which is not really a new thing. I think 1981, Ulrich and Jack Trout, for some of you who know marketing and are probably in marketing, would have read that book. It's about positioning, and positioning is what is really about how to find that little hole, they say, le canot, I think they say in French, how to find that place where whenever your name is mentioned, it's clear who they're talking about. But then later, I think it was 2001, Tom Peters was much more intentional, and he wrote a book called Brand You, or an article rather called Brand You. And in that book, he talked about how it is important for executives, for students, for parents, for anybody to intentionally create a personal brand for personal as well as for professional needs. Because, it's important even as a person, whether it's a church, for people to know what's Thebe about. Or whether it's at school, maybe you're in student leadership, everybody needs to know what you're about. Or wherever you are, it's important to have that clarity. George Bernard Shaw, a great American writer, once said, life isn't about finding yourself, but it is about creating yourself. So you know for sure that when it comes to the concept of personal branding, it's not just going to happen. You are going to actively have to do it. As I said in the beginning, it's about intentionally and consciously trying to shape perceptions about how you are seen. So today I want to chat to you a little bit about how people go about doing that. And we'll talk later as well as to why you want to do it. And I think I hinted a little bit as well, because I said, it's really about ensuring that you are able to attract the right opportunities, but also that you attract the right people, but also that you can advance in your career, or you can even create a career. About 15 years ago or so, I wrote a book called Brand You, how to create a personal brand that's aligned with your passions as well as your purpose. And I made it simple for myself, as well as for everybody else, and I created the whole structure around the 7 C's. So here we go. So because I know where you are right now, you're thinking, when I leave UNISA, when I get out of here, I'm going to be a star. I'm going to stand out. I'm going to be like Tom Peters. I'm going to be like Kim Kardashian. I'm going to be like anybody, Nomzamo Mabata, anybody else in this world. So the first C to me is about clarity. Clarity is what I call the foundation of your brand. I alluded earlier to Ulrich and Jack Trout, talked about positioning. Clarity is really about understanding who you are, what you're about, and why we should remember you. Clarity. So clarity is an important foundation of how to build your brand. Because without that clarity, without having defined who you are, what you're about, what matters, it's going to be very difficult for people to understand why they should have a relationship with you. Because you know how it goes. When are you approaching somebody, when you want to date somebody, you need to say, hey, this is who I am. Or whether you want a job, put out in a CV, it needs to be clear who you are. So that's the first C, and that's very important. It's about, if you want to remember just 2 words out of it, it's about positioning and purpose. What you stand for and what matters. So that's what clarity is about. The second one, very important, is about competence. I saw a beautiful quote somewhere that says you can get away with charm for the first 5 minutes, but thereafter you better know something. So knowing something is to me competence. So we all go to university, we take extra courses, we go to whatever, you go to many places to try and build our competence. It's very, very important for competence because you can't just go around saying that I'm a brand, because I don't understand what is a brand. A brand must sell something. So competence is understanding whether I'm a great marketer or when I become a good accountant, whether I'm going to become a civil engineer or whether I want to become a good community builder. So it's about understanding what is my competence. When I use this, just those two first for a minute, I'll talk about clarity and competence and use maybe perhaps one universal example. Some young man called Barack Obama, I think he was the president of the US at some stage. This is a lawyer by training, so that was his competence. But then he then said, I need people to understand what I'm about. And he talked about change, a change you can believe in. And he says, that's what they're going to see. When they see me, they see the embodiment of change. But we can come here right back here at home and look at something that's happened recently, elections for the 7th administration of South Africa, 30 years into South Africa. So let's talk about how the political parties, for example, how the leaders of the political parties, how they position themselves. Because I think the leaders are very better. You look at a leader like Mmusi Maimane, who's been in government a while ago, and he, when you look at his campaign, what is it? One job for every home. A job in every home. So he says, that's how they're going to position myself. When they have to decide how to vote and who to vote, I want them to remember that I represent one job for every home. So that's quite compelling as an idea, isn't it? And then if you go to somebody else, like Julius Malema, for example, he says, if I get into government, this is what I'm about. I'm going to get the land back and I'm going to nationalize all the state assets. Because you see what purpose positioning is all about. And the competency, then you can say, oh, what do you know about that? It's what do you know? So now if Mmusi says, I'm going to give one job for every home. So he may not be competent himself, he may not be a builder himself, but he probably will say, I'm going to create an infrastructure, I'm going to create a body of people who are going to build houses, or I own a company, or I'm going to put all the resources, or I'm going to set up an organization to do that. Competence is really about your ability to deliver on your promises. Because all that clarity is about a promise as well. Positioning and purpose is a promise. You're making a promise to somebody that you can do something, and then competence is, and I am qualified to make that promise because this is what I'm about. Now, of course, these are also wonderful to talk about as well, but we need to know who you are. We need to know what makes you so different. That's why the third C is what I call cover. Now, cover is packaging. How will we distinguish you? And I think let's stick with these political parties because it's so interesting what they've done for themselves. You remember when the EFF came into power, what did they do? They said, we are going to wear red and we're going to wear the workers' clothes. Because when you go to parliament, they should see the representatives of parliament. So packaging is quite important. And we know this because even in the world of branding where we come from, the world of branding where all of us live in rather, we know how packaging is important because when you come to a supermarket and you look at a shelf full of products, the one thing that helps the one product stand from the other is packaging. Because you look at, that's a packaging. So you know how Woolworths packages premium, you know how Checkers packages mid, and you know how Boxer packages lower. And as you package, it also determines the quality of the things that you do in that space. So cover is quite important. Research was done many years ago, and they said 55% of the driver of the perceptions people have about you is based on the packaging. And they said, of the visual. And they said 38% is on the verbal, what you say or how you say it. And they say only 7% on your content. I know I said competence is important, but of course it's important. Competence is what we say in, I think it's in marketing, we call it a hygiene factor. If you don't have it, we'll notice. If you have it, it's not a big deal. We expect you to have it. So that's why it's at 7%. But that 55% tells you how important packaging is, and as I've said about even the products in shelves. Jack Nicholson is interesting. I mean, he's old, but you guys probably won't remember. It's probably some fossil. But Jack Nicholson said something so beautiful, and he said, without my glasses, I'm just a fat 63-year-old man. He says, but when I put my sunglasses, I am Jack Nicholson. And I think you remember DJ's Boo used to have many, again, I'm using such old examples. What a mess. But it's an example nonetheless. DJ's Boo here in South Africa, when he had an alter ego called Mzekezek and was the scarf. And we never got to see the face, but we got to associate that scarf with the person. Because what packaging does as well, it helps to simplify associations. We're able to say, I can differentiate between the two, between him and her, or between they and them. The fourth thing in terms of how you build your brands is the channels. So it's also important to have your channel. How am I going to tell my story? Because I need to now tell my story. Because now I've clarified. It's very clear who I am. You know what I'm about. You know my story. And you know I'm qualified to say this. You know my competence. I'm qualified. And look at me. I've got the whole thing. It works. So because, but that's not good enough. Because that may just be relevant or visible or valuable to the people who get to see you. And I need to open up my channels. So the fourth C is channels. You need to create channels to tell your story. And we're living such interesting times, and I'll talk about it even from a digital perspective a bit later. But you need to create the channels. So what channels you're going to use? Some people say, do you know what? Because I want to be seen as a thought leader. Let's say that's what we did in my clarity. I want to be seen as a thought leader in marketing, or I want to be seen as a community activist, or I want to be seen as a, whatever you pick. You now have to say, but how am I going to tell that story? So now as a thought leader, let's say as a thought leader, let's say like somebody who's known for something, and you probably will say, I'm going to write a book. Now, all of a sudden, you write a book. So there's a young lady. She's now a baroness in the House of Lords in the UK. She's a Zambian woman, Dr. Thebe Ikalafeng, a very smart woman. She was a PhD from I think from Oxford, and MBA from Harvard, and bachelor's from some university in Zambia, I think, University of Zambia. Interesting what she's done with her career. I mean, now she's a baroness in the British House of Lords. Obviously, it's not as a British passport, but also I think she retains her Zambian passport. Interesting what she did. When she left the World Bank, now she used to work at the World Bank. When she left the World Bank, she said, how are they going to know who I am and what I stand for? She's like, I am going to write a book called Dead 8. Now, Dead 8 was a book which spoke about how aid is not good for the continent. Everybody started trashing the book. They're like, what does she know? She only spent 7 years at the World Bank. We don't agree with her, all those things. But guess what? The book got people talking about her views on aid. So all of a sudden, we're all talking about Dambisa Moyo all over the world. And then started writing articles, then started giving talks, then created a website. Then guess what? Those are her channels. She said, my primary channel, I'm going to write a book, and then I'm going to use that book to give talks. Then I'm going to use those talks to write articles. Then I'm going to be interviewed all over the media. So her channels were wide open. So that's how she ended up where she is now, in the House of Lords, because of visibility. She now started getting opportunities to sit on boards. She started getting opportunities to give talks all over the world. I mean, I brought her to South Africa a couple of times, and the hall was full when Dambisa stands there. And I always laugh when I talk to her because I say, oh, Dambisa, the way you appear, with the 6-inch Louboutin heels, pencil skirts, and you have long flowing hair. The packaging I'm talking about. She's like, it's very important, Thebe, how I show up. It must be aligned with my story. So packaging must be aligned to a story. The channels must also be aligned with your story. Because guess what? Not all of us want to write books or can write books. Not all of us want to give public speeches or can even give public speeches. Sometimes all you want to do is just you want to get your story out. Then maybe, of course, you say, my channel, I'm going to write my CV. That's my channel. I'm going to start a blog. Maybe that's going to be my channel. Or I'm going to create a Twitter handle, or was it X now? I'm going to create a LinkedIn profile. Those are my channels. But of course, all this, whether it's a clarity, whether it's a competence, whether it's your cover, whether it's a channel, must be relevant to the audience that you want to attract. So it's quite important as well to understand and to know the audience that you want. What the channels are going to do for you, of course, they're going to help to do one important thing: create attention, or bring attention, attract attention to you. Clarity is intention. The channels is attention. So they're going to bring attention to who you are, or they're going to bring the audiences to where you are. So not just who you are, but to where you are. And they are going to also do something important. They're going to confirm. So your competence, your cover, and all those are also going to confirm what you did in the first part, which is clarity. Because remember what a brand is at the end of the day. So I know what's talked about consciously and intentionally coming up with the idea to position yourself, but in its simplest way. A personal brand or a brand is a promise made and a promise delivered. It's whatever you say, deliver on it. So when I look at you and you say to me, oh, I am a sophisticated businessman, and you're wearing an overall, I'm like, wow, now, come on now. Sophisticated businessman wearing an overall. And if you say, I'm the smartest person in the world, I'm the thought leader, everybody listens to me, but you've never put anything down, you've never spoken anywhere, where am I going to validate all these things that you're talking about? The sixth and important C is what I call congruence. How everything comes together. Because now we talked about your clarity, talked about your competence, talked about your cover, talk about the channel. These are all disparate things. Each and every one of them can exist on its own, if you will. But now you have to bring it all together. Congruence to me is how everything fits together. I think in marketing we call it what? Integration. So I know you guys would have heard about integrated marketing or integrated communication. It's how everything comes together. So congruence to me, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples about what congruence really is about. Congruence really is about ensuring that what you say and what you do come together. They're aligned. How you present yourself and what you say about yourself are aligned. There's a young golfer, Tiger Woods, I think is his name. I met Tiger when he was 23. I think when he was 23, he's like 50 now. Can't believe he's that old already. But I met Tiger when he was 23. And at that time, I was at Nike then. I was chief marketing officer for Nike. And I remember what we all loved about Tiger Woods. We loved about Tiger Woods. He came from such a beautiful family, so you know how some of us grow up, but this one is Mfundi's child. So there's an expectation about who he is and who you are and how you'll be raised if you're a child of a priest or pastor or a child of anybody. So Tiger was the same story. So we all loved Tiger because Tiger had all these family values. There was a clarity. This guy was all about golf. Best golfer in the world. And the way he dressed on Sundays, we always knew when you see red, Tiger is competing to win. And his channels were clear. His PR was great, Tiger Woods. And then I think in his late 30s or so, or early 30s, late 30s, he had a little something that happened. What happened? He was caught cheating while he was married, and his world fell apart. Guess what happened? Tiger had sold all of us the story that he's a perfect human being. Well-raised, son of an ex-Marine or ex-soldier who was raised with discipline. He used to show us his family and his children. So that's the picture that we bought, because remember I said it's about promise made. But then when we found out that on the side, Tiger was doing something else, guess what happened, which is so crazy, and I've always found this interesting. His ranking went from number 1 to the bottom. Sponsors lost $12 billion overnight. The companies which were associated with him, their stock market went down by $12 billion overnight. Tiger started having problems with knees. Tiger started having problems with the swing. You're like, whoa, Tiger, before we knew all the scandal about you, you were perfect. Nothing else happened. But because when things fall apart, everything falls apart. The swing goes away, the knees goes away, the money goes away. It's still around, but it's no longer the same Tiger. But then we've got other two people you and I all know very well. Jay-Z and Trump. Now we're talking about politics, but it's that season. So Trump, interesting, when he was running for elections in 2016, I think, he said, when I come into government, I'm getting rid of all foreigners, all Mexicans, sending them back to their shithole countries, he used to call us, if you recall. And everybody says, this guy is such a racist. He's just talking, he just wants to get into government. Once he's in government, he's going to forget all those things. He's going to be like all the presidents. People expected Barack Obama to go do things for black people, but Barack Obama fitted into an American president. Trump got in. When Trump got in, what did he do? Exactly what he promised. He started trying to build a wall. He started trying to kick out all the Mexicans, started calling us all kinds of names, and he said, we are putting America first. FT, one of the most respected newspapers in the world, wrote an article about it. They said Trump is an anti-this, anti-that, anti-that. And they said everything. They said when he got into government, he's pursued an agenda to do exactly what he promised. Americans voted for that Trump, and they are getting exactly what they voted for. And he was like, whoa, you're right, promise made, promise delivered. JZ is back with this MK, and what's he saying? I'm going to come in, I'm going to deliver what I did then. And they interviewed his daughter the other day, and they said, what are you going to do when you guys get into government? And she said, Dudu, she says, we're going to bring back the 9 wonderful years. When Cyril came into power, what did he say? We had 9 wasted years. So you can see what happens, right? So we know exactly what we're going to get when JZ comes in. We know exactly what we got when Trump comes back in again. The same applies to you as well. The same applies to you as well. Is you can't put stuff on your CV, because a lot of us like to put beautiful things on our CV, put beautiful stuff on our websites, and just tell a wonderful story, and then they meet us. And when people meet us, they're like, the story and you don't align. There's a problem here. I mean, I've had people, for example, who put up on their CVs that they've got these degrees, they've done all those things. And you know what we do these days? These days we forget to do the most important things, or we overlook doing the most important things. Verification. Like we don't go and verify. Of course, these days we're doing exactly that. We forgot to say, Thebe says he's got X and Y, he's been here and there. Let's check if it's true. And we don't always do that. And so this young man who did that happened twice to me. You think I'd learn, but I guess I say you learn after 3 times. Advertising works that way, right? Maybe I'll learn for the 3rd one. And I looked at the CV. We loved his talk. We loved how he speaks. We look at the CV. It's our guy. We got our guy. We brought him into the business, started working. And then we started asking, when we say, could you deliver X, Y, Z? Because we expect that because it's on the CV. And the things didn't quite match. Like you look at what he says, what he said on the CV, and his inability to deliver what is in the CV. And it's like, there is no congruence. There's no alignment between what he was promised and what he delivered. And we had to get rid of him. And guess what? It's not good for you, because they're going to call us and ask us for references. They're going to say, Thebe or whoever has applied for a job, we're calling for a reference. He says or she said they were able to do X and Y and Z, and they were brilliant at this. Could you give us a reference on that? And then me, I hope everybody's like me. May I speak the truth. May I look in the eyes and I say, no, they did not deliver this. Or I say, one of my greatest losses. Because they're just trying to verify is the congruence between your story and how you deliver things. The 7th one is what I call confidence. But I think the Jewish people call it chutzpah. It's that, when you walk into a place, they're like, this person knows the story, they believe the story, they walk their story. Because it's important as well to be able to walk the talk, to be able to look like your paper, to be able to look like what you're saying. So confidence is important, because confidence is a glue. Confidence holds that clarity that we spoke about. It holds that competence that we talk about. It holds that cover that we talked about. It holds that those channels that we talk about. And I just remembered I've skipped one important C, and I cannot go without saying that. That's community. Community is the 6th C. It's actually the 4th, but I forgot it. It's community. Community is important. Community is what are called your network, your people, like where you hang out, who you are associated with. Because you know what they say? Your network is your net worth. And part of dealing with that network, part of raising your net worth is understanding who is in your network. It's important to understand who you surround with. Because when you're growing up, our parents used to say, birds of a feather flock together. So try and understand who you're flocking with right now. The second question you should be asking yourself related to your community, your network, is who ought to be here that is not here right now? Now you have to go out on a recruiting mission. You're like, whew, I need to have X and Y and Z in my team. I can't be seen with, which is the third one. The third part of it is, who do I need to fire? So that's why it's important to know who's in. Am I happy with them? Second, who should be here? Third, who do I fire? You need to go out firing. Don't be afraid to fire people. Just don't be, there's a couple of ways to go about it. You could be cold and not take their calls anymore, or you can just ignore them, or you could just be clear and say, listen, you and I, we're not seeing eye to eye. We want different things in life, so I don't want you to be part of my life. So back to that last one, it's finally you can only bring these things together when you have confidence. So those are the sort of the 7 C's. But you may be also saying, you know what, Thebe, these things apply well, but they probably don't apply as well as in the social media or the digital age. Well, personal branding in the digital age is even so much more important, but it is also so much more challenging. Because in the digital age, you have to be agile. Not just have to be agile, information changes so quickly. So, you see what people do sometimes, they're like, oh my God, everybody's on my case. Let me switch off the notification. Let me switch off the comments so they mustn't talk. People react quickly, or let me close my channel, or let me add some stuff quickly, or let me say stuff. So we have to be very agile in the digital age. So in the digital age, it's quick, it's easy to attract attention. Because, we do things like what we say, let's boost this post. Let's put it in multiple places. Let me put it in LinkedIn, let me put it in Facebook, let me put it in Twitter, let me put it everywhere else. Let me go to TikTok. It's so quick, you can get out quickly your brand, but you can also damage your brand just as quickly. So there you even have to be more intentional and you have to pay more attention to what it is that you're doing. Of course, the second important part in the digital age is what we call, after the trying to get all the attention with all this, is the conversion. Because from a conversion perspective, you have to understand now, in the digital age, people like to talk about clicks, likes, interactions, conversations. That's the conversion. But to get all those, to convert more people to follow your story, to be on your side, you now need to understand the power of conversion. How do you convert people? Some people like Kanye West, they'll post one post and follow one person, and that's the mystique they create. Some people says, I have to post every day. Some people says, I have to post at 5 o'clock in the morning. If you're a student, you say, I need to wait for free data and post at midnight because I get data for free then. My people will understand. So you have to understand, how do you convert? What type of content do you put in to convert people to follow you? But also to convert, where should you be? Back to the attention part. Where should you be? Because not all of us should be on LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn has positioned itself as the serious people. And the TikTok is the creative people, the fun people. And Twitter says the opinionated people. And Instagram, or the show-offs, I can't remember, or something of that nature. The people, just once, it says, my niece is 21, 22, and she always says to me, Uncle, your posts are long. Us in Instagram, we just want to say like, don't like. That's it. Or put a comment with the emoji there. Says, if you want to say all these things, Uncle, we think you need to go to LinkedIn. Because in LinkedIn, you can speak forever. Or you can go to Facebook. So you can see also part of the conversion is understanding not just the content itself, but the channel that you're using for that content. And of course, the important part of it is retention in the digital age. How do you retain your people? So it's not just about attracting them, giving them stuff, but also understanding the dynamics. I was speaking to a client the other day, and we're looking at what happens in communications about them in the digital space. And they're like, oh my goodness, Thebe, these people, this journalist writes so much about us. This one hates us. And this newspaper, we should avoid it. So you need to understand all those. Is part of retention, understanding where should you focus your energies to get ahead. And finally, building your brand is understanding what Warren Buffett once said. It takes 20 years to build a reputation, but just 5 minutes to destroy it. In the digital age, I think it's just 5 seconds. I hope I've been able to share with you some interesting insights on how this is done. Go out to read about more, just Google. It's all over the place. You can learn all those, but I hope I've given you a bit of a framework of how to think about it. So you have to be intentional, and you have to be conscious. But most importantly, you have to be aware of what you're doing. Because when you do this well, you will stand out, you'll be differentiated, and everybody knows what you're about. And that's all we want in life. We just want everybody to appreciate us for who we are. That's personal branding.